Hello, this is Ashley. Well, I'm Ashley from the Motherhood Circle, and I just wanted to jump on today and just let you know I just got a new camera. So hopefully I'm going to be able to bring you lots of new content and in a really quick way. So hopefully some of these videos will be nice and short so you can quickly watch them while you're on a lunch break at work, or when your toddler's sleeping, or when your baby's sleeping, or anything like that, just when you've got a couple minutes. And some of them may be a lot longer, so we'll just take it how we go, see how it goes, and see what you would like to learn and what topics that you want to hear about. So today I'd love to talk to you about birth trauma. And birth trauma is really something that I consider a really very important thing that women should know about. I think that people should know about worldwide. We talk about postnatal depression, we talk about PTSD, and all of these things can be linked to birth trauma. 1 in 3 women in Australia will suffer from birth trauma and experience that. And it may not be just what you think. You may feel that it's from a traumatic birth physically, that some sort of emergency happened, something really major physically happened. But a lot of women experience birth trauma talk about the reason that they're feeling that trauma is because they didn't feel supported, they didn't feel empowered, they didn't feel that they were listened to, they didn't feel heard, they didn't feel that they were in control. They felt like they had things that were done to them. I speak to so many women in postpartum and years later who talk about their birth trauma, and it's such a sensitive topic for me, and something that I'm really passionate about, because in my second birth I experienced birth trauma, and I'd never even heard of birth trauma. I was only lucky enough to know that I had birth trauma because I was connected to some really wise women in birthing communities, doulas. I knew private midwives, and I was able to reach out and get that assistance and support. But without me opening up and talking about it, which comes quite naturally to me, I will seek advice and I will seek support. I know a lot of women wouldn't want to talk about, how they're feeling. But I wanted to share with you my personal experience, because I feel that we need to talk about these things. We need to, as emotional as they are, I feel that the best way to heal is to talk about them. And I'm not talking about birth trauma to scare anyone who's pregnant or anything like that. Actually, just to spread the awareness in case there's other women out there who are feeling the same way that I did, and they're just not too sure where to seek help from or what they're actually even feeling, because how would you ever know what something is unless you've actually been through it before? And if someone has sat there and told you about their experience, or told you this is what you're feeling, this is what you may be feeling. So I had my baby. I'll go back and tell the story. I had a cesarean with my first baby, and my second baby I wanted a vaginal birth. I've always wanted to vaginally birth my babies. And I educated myself, and I fought for the birth that I wanted, which was extremely hard for a woman who's overweight, who's got gestational diabetes, and who's had a cesarean before. Even though it was safer for me to go for a vaginal birth, I didn't get the support from the hospital system that I was hoping for. And my story is not it's not unique. It's very common among VBAC women. Anyway, so I'd spent so much time educating myself to not have an induction and to have a vaginal birth that I didn't even know much about the birth process. So I went in and I thought, if I just get a midwife, because I'd seen obstetrics, I'd been with obstetricians the whole time who were surgeons. If I just saw myself with a midwife, I would be safe, is what I felt. And I went in and I had my birth. I had a spontaneous labour, and it was amazing. I felt so empowered, so amazing. And when I was in there, I gave them my birth plan, and everything was amazing. And I was straight away, after I finally allowed them in the room a couple of hours later, I was just subjected to a lot of pressure to do things that I didn't want to do, like get a cannula in my arm just in case some emergency happened, which I didn't want to do. It wasn't on my birth plan. It's not something that I ever wanted to do, but I submitted. it took me out of my birth zone. It took me out of feeling empowered, and I had to logically make decisions about something I didn't want to do. And I also felt very powerless because I'm in a hospital system. I want to be a good girl and I want to get along with people. At the end of the day, they're the ones that I have to turn to help me in this birth, is the situation I was in. So I didn't want to cause too many problems, but at the same time, what I wanted wasn't actually happening. What I had actually planned and what I talked to them about, they took that power away from me. I was very vulnerable. I just think I'm in labour, so I'm not in any shape or form to be having deep conversations and advocating for myself, standing strong for myself when I'm feeling so vulnerable as well. So I have the cannula put in, and then I have a vaginal examination, and everything's okay, everything's going well. Like, I was already 8 centimetres by that point, 7 or 8 centimetres, and I thought that my waters were leaking, and so I told the midwife. And anyways, the whole birth story is probably irrelevant at this point. I mean, I will tell my birth story at some point, because it is a birth story worth telling, as all of our birth stories are. There's many lessons and insights to learn from my story. But I didn't trust the people that were in the room. From the moment that I came in there, the doctors were talking to me about a cesarean when there was nothing wrong. They had already made their decision that this woman who has already had a cesarean, who's basically a failure, I'm not saying that this is, how I feel about other women. This is how I feel that I was judged before, by these people who'd come in. They didn't know me. They didn't know my fight. They didn't know how passionate I was. They didn't know how informed or educated I was. And they had judged me, basically. So from the very moment that I'd gone in there, they'd already probably assumed that I was going to be having a cesarean. So they just wanted me to get in and get me basically to have me a cesarean as quickly as they possibly could. So the whole birthing process, when things slowed down and I was stuck at a date, they were talking about positions, and they were talking to me about all the wonderful things that could happen, all of the risky things that could happen if I waited and I continued to vaginally birth. They were talking about things that could happen in surgery if I waited, and they never ever talked to me about, that I could continue this plan, and it is safe to continue this plan, that I could continue to birth for another 24 hours if I wanted to. My baby and I were not in any risk at that point in time, yet I had no options given to me, and I was made to feel like I had no options, and I was made to feel like my baby would never come out my vagina, which I just truly never believed would ever happen. I truly believed that my baby would come out. At this point, I'd had an epidural. My waters were broke against my wishes. I was stuck. I couldn't move. Before, I was standing and I was calm and I was relaxed and everything was working really well. And then I was feared and I was tense and I was just really wanting this baby to come out by myself, but I've been told that it was not going to happen. So, we had a stall. My baby was still coming down. It was just her positioning in that current time was probably going to take a bit longer. And probably, a million vaginal examinations at that point and constant fearing was not helping the birth process at all, surprisingly. All mammals go somewhere safe and in the dark when they're birthing. They don't, go somewhere where it's really dangerous and they're getting told this is really dangerous because you're going to clench up and get adrenaline come in, which is the opposite to oxytocin, which is what you need to feel good and relax and let all those good feel-good hormones come out. Anyways, I went through, had a cesarean. It was really traumatic. What they were trying to avoid with VBACs is they're trying to avoid you having a tear, a rupture basically, your uterus rupturing where the cesarean scar is. And what happened in surgery is, unfortunately, the story that I've been told, I'm not really 100% sure because I couldn't see, but I was told that my daughter's reflex, her arm pulled up and tore my uterus. So then we were in an emergency situation at that point, and doctors had to be called in from home because the doctors there couldn't stitch me up, and I lost like 3.1 litres of blood. I thought I was going to die. I told my husband, I really loved him, and that I didn't think I was going to live. I did not think that I would have any more children after that. At least I thought I was going to lose my uterus. It was really scary. It's getting me emotional thinking about it now. It was really scary. What people were saying in the surgery, they were arguing with each other. The surgeons were arguing and the anesthesiologists were arguing. There was a complete power struggle from the people who were in the room before and the people who just entered the room. And I wanted nothing than just to be put under, but I was vomiting. And anyways, I was in there for like 3 or 4 hours. And I survived, thankfully, and I am very thankful that, you know, we have all of the medical things today, like blood transfusions. I received blood transfusions and all the medication to stop me vomiting and all the other things that were happening. And afterwards, the medication, you know, and stuff that, you know, helped me heal. But even though I had flashbacks for weeks, I'm talking like my arms were black and blue from all of the needles and everything that went in me. And I even didn't feel well enough to leave the hospital, and I told 3 midwives on 3 different shifts that I didn't feel well enough, and none of them listened to me. I think they thought I was a hypochondriac. You know, surprise, surprise. I'd had 3.1 litres of blood removed from my body, and I didn't feel well, and no one was responding. These people have, like, they're highly trained people. They're, you know, nurses have gone through 3 or 4 years worth of education, and they couldn't even hear me when I was telling them that I wasn't well. So I got sent home after, I think it was 2 or 3 nights, if you include the 3rd night being the fact that I was in surgery. So I didn't get to my room till like 5 a.m. once I was on round the clock watching and everything like that. My baby was away from me for 4 hours the first time. My husband and my baby were sat in a dark room by themselves, and I didn't breastfeed her until 4 hours later. So once I did get sent home from the hospital, you know, I was shattered. I was sick. I was tired. I had to go to the GP because they send you to the GP, like a cesarean woman who can't drive and a new baby, to go get checked out for all these tests and make sure everything's okay, because, you know, why send someone out of the hospital when you can get all that in the hospital, who's not feeling well? Let's send her home, and then she can go to the GP and get all those tests done, and then come back to the GP for all the results and everything like that. Anyway, so I went to the GP, and she took one look at me. I couldn't breathe. I was white as a ghost, and she sent me straight back to the emergency to be readmitted to the hospital. And I was readmitted again overnight for another blood transfusion, and I received shocking care from the head nurse. It's just there are some amazing people who work there, but it's the ones that don't have the empathy, and they don't have that human, like, it's like they glazed over. It's just a job, and you're just another person, and they don't have that humanity, that real human connection left with them that can be really traumatic. I remember every single person who treated me kindly, and every single person who said something nasty to me or made me feel like just terrible. So I basically, you know, came home eventually, and, you know, I was there exclusively breastfeeding my baby, and I had a toddler, and, you know, I had to get on with life, and I had no support besides my husband. I had no one come around to look after us at all. It was just my husband and I, after something so traumatic. And I was just feeling like the things that I was feeling, I never experienced my first. It was totally different. I felt like I wanted to run away. Like, I just wanted to worry about myself, and all I could worry, I couldn't worry about myself because I had 2 children to look after. So, you know, I'm constantly meeting my children's needs. My toddler was tantruming. She'd been away from me for several days. She was in an emotional mess. She now had a new sister who was getting all mummy's attention, and I was awake around the clock, as well as healing from 3.1 litres of blood loss and everything else, surgery, I mean, major surgery. And the biggest thing that was going through my brain is, after I'd spoken to some midwives afterwards and started to research, is the biggest thing was that I found out that I could have had a vaginal birth, and that basically I'd been prejudged and failed by the people who were there to support me. And I was basically blaming myself for allowing certain things to happen to me, for allowing those interventions against my birth plan, against my better judgment, and for not knowing the true scale that some of those interventions, what they could have caused, what the outcome was. And it was really hard. Like, I would say for 6 months, it was really hard to bond with my daughter. I loved her, of course I loved her, but it wasn't the same as when I had my first. I was really, I was questioning whether I'd made the right decision. I was like wanting to pack my bags up, and I was wanting to leave, which is really hard. Even to this day, I feel guilty for those feelings, because it isn't how it should be. And I feel robbed of, a beautiful postpartum. I feel robbed of that bonding experience with my daughter. And anyways, I was really worried all the time, and I was doing tests to see if I had postnatal depression. I was so depressed. I was so down. It just wasn't normal. And I was having flashbacks of the surgery as well. I was having flashbacks of everything. It was just a horrific, horrific time. So I wanted to share that story with you, which is obviously still 20 months out. It's still very triggering for me. It's triggering as well because so many women in the world are experiencing this experience, basically. 1 in 3 women in Australia are experiencing this, and they don't need to experience this with the right support being listened to. Of course, we can't be 100% perfect, but I believe that there are massive changes that could happen to support women, which is why I've gone on to study to be a postpartum doula, and why I support women in the postpartum, because basically we see people throughout our care for a pregnancy, and we get all this help and assistance and medical checks and that. And someone like me who can go through something so traumatic, and so many women, you just get sent home and it's good luck, here's your baby, good luck, okay, good luck. And then I'm left to raise that baby. When my mental health is not 100% myself and I can barely look after myself, I'm then supposed to raise a healthy baby. It doesn't make sense at all, which is the whole reason why I'm doing what I'm doing now, by supporting women, to give women resources and support, because we all deserve that support. But I did end up getting some help. I ended up speaking to Birth Talk, and I got this book. It's called How to Heal a Bad Birth, Making Sense, Making Peace and Moving On. And it's by the founders of birthtalk.org. So there's some great tools and tips and everything in here, and this is one of my resources. And I'll tell you what some of the things. So it says here, How to Heal from a Bad Birth is a straightforward guide for women who have experienced a difficult, disappointing or traumatic birth and want to gain understanding and clarity about what happened and why they feel so bad, and move on. Do people keep saying you should be grateful? Often women are told just to get over it, or healthy mother, healthy baby, that's all that matters. And we know it's not that simple, and that your emotional health matters too. So there's plenty of tools in this book anyway. So I really highly recommend that you get this book if you're feeling similar, if you've had a traumatic birth, if you felt that your birth wasn't what you expected, or anything like that. This is a really great resource. I don't think it's too much money either, and it's quite thick. So there's plenty of activities and things in there as well. And it just, time's the best thing really. Time, from how I felt obviously 2 years ago almost to now, I feel a lot a lot calmer, a lot better about it. But I also did a counselling session with them through Skype. So and I've talked to many doulas. I've talked to many friends, because I've got many birth doula friends and private midwife friends, and it's been a healing process. It'll probably take me my whole life to heal, because, you know, it was a traumatic thing that happened to me. You know, one of the most traumatic things that had ever happened to me in my life. And so many women go through these experiences every single day. So I wanted to give you a resource to look at, so that you can actually start to heal from your birth. And if you ever want anyone to talk to, please send me a PM or a message or an email. My email is hello@themotherhoodcircle.com.au, or you can jump into my Facebook group, which is the Motherhood Circle community. I would love to hear from you, because I've been through it myself, and of course I'm here to support you as well. But I hope that gives you some insight if you are experiencing any of that birth trauma. And I am going to leave it for there, because I think we went well over time this time. Hopefully I can keep the next one shorter. If you made it to this far, thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.